welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody doing today? How are you, Lacey?
I am fabulous. I know I've been gone for a few weeks,
Yeah.
taking a little break after teaching for a full year, so I'm excited to be back. And wow, I take a few weeks off and the world goes crazy.
I know.
I was on vacation looking at my phone going, oh my gosh, we're going to have so much to talk about.
I know. You expect, what could really happen in the news? And then everything happens at once.
And then everything happens in the news. Oh, man. Okay.
We'll talk about Kamala. We'll talk about what's going on with Trump and how the Republicans are reacting to that today. We'll also cover some finance stuff. And I got to talk about RFK. And, of course, we got to talk about Lauren Boebert's recent run-in with the law. So we'll cover all that and more. It'll be fun. But first I want to talk about this. So I'm going to jump into this article real quick, everybody. We were talking about retirement and stuff like that not too long ago. I mean, we're finance people. We talk about this a lot. But I saw this article recently from Yahoo Finance. So it just says many people retire in debt. Here's how to manage it, kind of thing. And I just kind of wanted to look at it real quick. So they talk about the different things you can do in retirement. And, generally, in Finance Week, there's like 4 or 5 things you can do if you're not meeting your retirement goal, right? So if I want to retire at 65, let's say, and I got to figure, okay, I need probably about this much money to do that, and at my standard of living, right, or the standard of living I want. But I'm not going to hit my goal. I can either decide to work longer. I could try to make more money. If that's possible. I can try to invest my money more aggressively and hope it makes more money, but that's risky because it could also lose more money, and then that puts me off even longer. Or I could do something like adjust down and go, okay, well, maybe I can live on less. Or I just have to go, well, maybe I can live part-time or work part-time or something like that. So I've got to find some way to manage that. So they talk about that a little bit in here, but basically, mortgage and credit card debt are a cold reality for over a quarter of retirees. So that's what people are talking about, people retiring and they have some credit or some mortgage debt. Credit debt, when you retire, is probably not great because credit cards are high interest. I don't know that I'd call mortgage debt a huge issue in retirement unless your mortgage is really high. I don't know if you have opinions about that, Lacey, or if you've dealt with that.
Well, you know what? I from having clients in both categories, the ones that don't have mortgage debt have a much smoother sailing time in their retirement for sure. I don't know problem. I don't know if I call it a huge problem per se, but I'd like to not have mortgage debt in my retirement, and
Absolutely.
I find my clients have a better time when they don't. However, in the scheme of things, if you can plan for it, if you're able to plan for it, and how much longer is it going to be around, and is it a huge debt or not? Did you buy your home back when they were more affordable and the payment's still pretty low?
Right. Right. If you're somebody, you bought your home 10 years ago and you've got an interest rate of like 4%, it's probably not a big deal. If you bought it recently and your interest rate's 7%, you might want to think about refinancing or doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to jump in. So they're just doing this. But they talk about many people are feeling the financial heat with inflation, which may be exacerbating the debt some retirees are still carrying. That's sort of, so they get into the findings. The sober findings, nearly 2/3 of retirees expect to be less financially secure than their parents and grandparents were in their retirements. And 1 in 5 fret about making payments on their monthly bills right now. So these are the kinds of concerns that cause people to make short-sighted decisions based on emotion. That has serious implications for retirement that might stretch 3 decades, but there are strategies to implement to chip away at your debt and preserve your nest egg. So just 26% are still paying off mortgages. 25% are still paying down credit card debt. I would do this.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Yeah,
I don't like that one.
the second one is a concern.
Right?
Yeah, you want to get rid of your credit debt before you retire. if you can.
Variable interest rates, those can go up and down.
Right.
Yeah, those payments go out of control.
Now, let's say you're getting to that age, you need to retire, you can't work anymore, and you have a substantial amount of credit card debt. Um, most financial people don't like to say this, but this is something that like you should consider is bankruptcy. If you can wipe out some of that credit debt, or at least get it to a more manageable payment through bankruptcy, that might be a way to go. And at that point, you got to figure you're 60 whatever years old when you're retiring. Do you really plan on buying another place or making a big purchase? Do you really need the credit score to be in that position, or could you suffer 7 years of bankruptcy? And if that helps get rid of the credit debt and makes it more manageable, that might be the way to go. But once again, now we're talking about you're having to lower your standard of living in retirement from where you want it to be. So one of those 5 options. So that would be the first one I would say. Mortgage, I wouldn't be as concerned about. The other thing I would say is this about the mortgage, because I've done this a lot. Because people tend to, it's like, okay, you're 60 something, you're getting ready to retire, and you're sitting down with the client, and then you're like, okay, you have this 3,500 square foot house, right? And maybe they got a great deal on it at the time, but it's like, it's huge. It costs a lot to maintain. You've got to hire a maid because you're getting too old to clean it, right? And you've got 5 bedrooms, and 3 of them you aren't using. I had a couple that had a 3-story house, and the wife was telling me, she's like, yeah, the first floor was lower. They were on the side of a hill. She's like, I haven't been down to the first floor or the third floor in like a year. I'm like, so you just living in the second floor, right? I'm like, so why don't you just get a really nice condo for a lower price, cash some of the equity, and use that to retire on?
Listen, people are all hell bent on land. They like to have the dirt underneath them,
Yep.
but do not discount the idea of a condo. As somebody who's, lived in New York City for many years, there are benefits to not actually having to own the dirt underneath you, because you don't have to maintain the dirt.
Right.
So much of the building's maintenance, you're paying a monthly fee for it, but you don't have to worry about coordinating or doing that maintenance yourself. You really only have to worry about that when it comes to stuff inside the walls. And sometimes even then, the condo or co-op has people that do that, and you sort of just get charged for it.
Absolutely.
So you can make your own life so much easier and make being independent easier and less stressful.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say too is this part of the concern about inflation, and I understand it, is because I don't think, Social Security is not been keeping up. So like, just to give you a real basic example, so like my grandparents were now like, God, 80s, 90s, whatever. When they retired, for every dollar they put in Social Security, they got like $1.30 back out of it, right, for the average person. Now my parents are retiring. For every dollar they put in it, they get pretty much $1 back with maybe some change, maybe 1 or 2 cents. When Lacey and I get to that point of retirement, we might get 70 cents on the dollar. And that's just because Social Security has not kept up with inflation. So I understand that concern. And I understand why, like, boomers today that are retiring are going, well, my parents had it easier. Yeah, because Social Security went further. Right?
Right.
And you didn't need as much stuff, because back then you didn't need to have a computer, and people didn't have cable and streaming services and all this stuff. So there wasn't all these other accoutrements you had to buy. But yeah, that's I could see that concern, but at the same time, inflation's not really going to be the big issue. Is it what your monthly check going to be keeping up, and do you have enough money to keep it up? Right. I don't think inflation's going to get rampant and run out of control. It's pretty much averaged around 3.5% forever over time. I mean, you'll see bumps and up and downs, but for the most part, it's pretty predictable. But yeah, the retiring and debt thing. This guy's gonna do the basic, success porn guru thing where it's just, rein in your spending, Keep working longer. It's just stuff I was saying. Uh, Tap into your retirement accounts to pay off your debt. I really, 90% of the time, I disagree with this. Um, why would you do that? Get rid of your savings. Um, you know, Redo your budget. The reason I disagree with it, and I've seen people do this, where, okay, I've got, I'll give you a great example. It wasn't a client; it was a potential client. I was a big Dave Ramsey fan, and she inherited some money from an aunt, and it was like 100,000. She had a real nice house. It was not ultra expensive, but she owed about 100,000 on the house, and her husband had just recently retired because he had a triple bypass for heart surgery, and he couldn't work anymore. And she was only going to work like another year or two part time. And I said, she was like, well, what should I do? Because pretty much their whole retirement savings was the little pension he had, and the 100,000 she got from the aunt, and then whatever they got at Social Security. And so I was telling her, well, I would bank that 100,000 and just pay off the mortgage because it's a small mortgage, and just keep paying it and going forward, and you should be fine. I mean, it'll be tight, but you should be fine. And she was like, well, but I watched Dave Ramsey, and he says I should pay off the house and pay off the house. And I kept telling her, don't do that, right? And so that's what she did. She paid. She didn't listen to me. She paid off the house, and then I didn't hear from her. And then a year later, she calls me, and her husband is back at the hospital, needs another massive surgery, but her insurance doesn't cover it, right? Because it was an experimental surgery. So he could either take the drugs that the insurance covered, which he might live a year or two, or he could do the surgery and he'd probably live 9 or 10 more years, right? And she doesn't have the money because she put it all in the house. And I was telling her, well, your only option now is either let your husband die or sell the house.
Yeah, see, it's I am pro pay off the house, but if it drains everything you have,
Yeah, you don't
you
drain your emergency money. You don't, and your retirement money. That you got to live on that money. So it's better to have it in a liquid form that you can get a hold of instead of putting it into a property like that. Because now you're stuck in a position of, well, now I got to get rid of the property.
right, right.
So
Yeah, that's not the situation. I'm in favor of paying off your house, but you also have to look at your finances a little more holistically. And you need to look and go, okay, can I pay off the house and still have a liquid emergency fund and not have like drained my retirement account? Like,
right,
can I pay off the house without greatly disrupting those other things?
right.
And if the answer is yes, I say do that deal all day long. But if you're going to do damage to those other two areas, I would definitely stop and rethink it.
Yeah, when you got to do the trick to being a finance. Part of the reason you're a financial advisor, if you guys have one, if you have a good one, they're going to ask you a lot of questions about your personal life and your habits and your choices, and they're going to want to have these long conversations with you. And the reason is because while we're doing that, we're taking notes and going, okay, well, husband had a triple bypass. Tell me about that. What are the odds he's going to be back in the hospital? Does your insurance cover everything? I need to know all this because if that happens, I need to have a plan. Right?
Right.
So you got to think about those things. It's like I have the huge house. Well, what's the maintenance on the house? Did you factor that in to your budget? Because maybe your huge house, you got to have it, repainted soon, or you got to do all this stuff, or you've got to pay somebody to come in and do the yard, and that's another whatever, $5,000 or $6,000 a year, $10,000 a year, just on maintaining the freaking home. Is it worth it? Right? Like Lacey said, with the condo, it's less to maintain.
Right.
It's
People
really
love
casual.
their dirt and they don't love maintenance fees, but you have to pay a water bill anyway. You have to pay all those other things anyway. You might as well get somebody else doing a lot of the work for you in the process.
Absolutely. So that was just kind of our looking at that for retiring. The things to think about. Retiring in debt, not terrible. Just make sure that you have a handle on how you're going to pay it. That's the big key takeaway. And it is always one of those 5 things. You're either going to have to work longer, make more, invest more aggressively, which is usually not a good idea. Adjust your retirement plans, to your cost of living, or do what a lot of people I know do is they, instead of keeping the big house, get rid of the house and maybe work part-time in retirement. And a lot of people work part-time in retirement not because they have to, but because otherwise they'd just be bored. I mean,
Right.
most of my clients.
Nice to have a bit of a schedule. Sometimes a lack of a schedule can make people feel like they're kind of all over the place. So it's good for having a schedule, and it's got the benefit, even if you don't really need the money, it can, in case of emergencies, it can help sort of keep your burn rate a little bit lower. You're
Absolutely.
burning through less every month.
Right.
And so if some emergency pops up, you might have helped yourself out in the future a little more.
Right. Even if you're only making $1,000 a month or something, working 10 hours a week, I mean, whatever it is, or 20 hours a week. So yeah, just fun things to think about. So moving along here, I'm going to skip this next one and we're going to go to this. So let's jump into the news a little bit here because I think this is interesting. So we have to talk about the election coming up, but it was kind of an interesting thing. GDP for the quarter came in. So Biden, I got to say this, as far as presidents go, historically he's not going to be like a big shot in there, but you talk about job growth, general economic prosperity, especially out of a pandemic. Wage growth for the first time in 30 years is outpacing inflation, right? You talk about the general economy, the Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act, all those things he did to invest in infrastructure, growing the country, it worked. And it was just basic Keynesian economics. The government basically put money into the system and it's pumped out well. Now, I know a lot of people don't feel it right away, but that kind of investment over time, you'll feel it in about 4 or 5 or 10 years. Because it'll mean more jobs, more people are buying, more money in the system, and more money in the middle class of the system, not pooled at the top, right? So all good stuff, but GDP came in really good for last quarter. It was 2.8% for a quarter, which is really great. They expected to be about 2.1. Well, Fox News was really freaking pissed about that. So Fox Business, I don't.
I'm sorry, I just kind of can't. I always enjoy watching them be like flabbergasted and not really knowing what to say about something, then try to quickly come up with some way to spin it like it's not good or not somebody can't take credit or.
Well, the thing about it is, for Fox Business, they're the worst freaking business people in the world. I mean, we're pretty far left, but at the end of the day, we live in a capitalist system, and we sort of go with it. So it's like, okay, when Trump became president, Lacey and I weren't sitting there going, oh, the economy's good. Well, we don't like it because Trump's the president. We were like, no, economy's good. We're gonna take advantage of it, right? Things were okay with Trump for the first, I don't know, couple of years, and then they started to slow down, and then the pandemic hit, and everything went to shit. But yeah, you don't get upset when things are going well just because it's not your guy. But that seems to be the Fox Business thing. So I found this, Luke Beasley found this clip on his show. So we're going to watch this real quick. But GDP came in really good. And Fox Business was really upset about it. Oops.
Was 2.1%. But let me skip forward to this contributor who really does not take the news well at all.
Get adjusted then up and down quite a lot.
The GDP at 2.8%, you have to believe we're going to see a revision there, right? Is that what you were going to say? Are we going to see a revision on second quarter?
I just can't. I hate this.
2.8%, you have to believe we're going to see a revision there, right? Is that what you were going to say? Are we going to see a revision on second quarter GDP?
What's happening?
It's the most optimistic fairy tale numbers I've ever seen in my life. In this, I just don't understand. Come on, we are not growing at 2.8% annualized. That's not happening, and this is going to be revised downward. I mean, what is bringing it up so much, Cheryl? Why is it 2.8? What is bringing this number so high unexpectedly when durables are down 6.6? I'm sorry. No, I have to look at that.
We should.
Okay, so we can't even. She's just really upset. I can tell her why it's up.
It's not going well. Like,
I can tell her why it's up. Wages are up. People have more money. There's more spending. Businesses are expanding. That's why it's up. Dipshit.
Well,
I mean,
they don't believe it. Of course.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. I mean, they're really upset, so they're going to revise it. It's going to be revised down. Yeah, maybe, but it's still beat. I mean, the estimate was 2.1, which was high. 2.8 is really high. You think it's really going to be that much of a change? You're talking about a 30 or 40% drop that is going to revise underneath that? I mean, come on. She's being ridiculous. But it's just funny to me that they're so fucking upset. Things are going well. People have food. People are prospering. People are buying shit. Oh no. It's the end of the world. Pandemonium.
They just expect that, the conservative platform is the only one under which economics can actually do well.
Yeah, things can thrive. I mean, and it's just, it goes into all that, and you get all the fear-mongering shit along with it. And that's the thing is, it's got to be, this is what frustrates me, because it's Fox Business, right? And this is part of why we started the show, is you see, like, Fox Business, Yahoo's not as bad, some of the, like, CNBC can be pretty terrible. They're very politically motivated, when they really should just be talking about business or finance. They should really just be talking about your money. And it shouldn't matter, it matters who the president is one way or the other, but they shouldn't be sitting there, well, things are good, but I don't like the president, so I'm going to be upset about that. And you should be too. Or things are bad, but I like the president, so I'm going to try and spin them like they're good.
Right.
Right. No, you should just say it's good or it's bad. It's really not that complicated.
It can be, it's good,
Yeah.
and I like the president, or it's good and I don't like the president.
Like
You can have these things go, any of the directions, but you don't have to try to skew the facts of the process,
Well, like I said, when Trump became president, I wasn't happy. It wasn't my choice. But I knew that he was going to be more tax favorable to the rich, and he was going to deregulate the markets, which he did, which the Republicans pushed real hard for. And so what did I do? I invested real hard into that kind of stuff, and I made a killing. Why? Because I didn't get upset because it wasn't my guy. I mean...
So wait, you didn't decide to do the worst possible thing for yourself because it wasn't your guy who made things kind of good for you?
Right. I didn't cut off my nose to smite my face.
Mm.
There
You have it, America. There's some real investment, skill and strategy right there.
Well, it's that whole thing about, if we go out to eat and I'm like, ooh, I really want Mexican, and we go to a place and it's got a Spanish name, and I get there and I'm like, oh, it's actually a French name. I got it wrong, and it's French food. I don't sit there and bitch that it's not Mexican food. I just make the best of what's on the menu.
Right.
It's still going to be good. Just didn't work out the way I expected it to.
You're like, well, maybe next time you'll get that taco,
Right. But I wanted to get into this because this, once again, things are good, like I said, but how does it affect individual people? And people don't feel it right away. And there are changes that happen in the system that do affect people. So Yahoo Finance did this, and I thought this was interesting, that 70% of workers are bracing for job cuts. So I wanted to just look at this real quick and talk about it.
Americans are worried about their job security despite continued historically low unemployment. According to a new study from MarketWatch, a full 70% of employees are bracing for layoffs in some way, whether that means saving money or applying for other jobs. To help us dive into this study, we welcome in Matt Brennan, who is the MarketWatch Guide's data journalist. Great to have you here with us. So, just take us into some of these findings. 7 in 10 workers bracing for job cuts here.
That's right. Thank you for having me on. So we wanted to learn more about how people are reacting to news of potential layoffs. We know that in 2023 and in 2024, there were a lot of headlines about layoffs, especially at tech companies, giving people a lot of concern. So what we wanted to do is we decided to survey 1,000 American workers.
I want to pause for a second. So the tech layoff thing was actually kind of a post-pandemic bump that was kind of funky. What ended up happening is a lot of people went remote, so there was a huge need for software engineers and tech people, and a lot of them weren't working, and it was hard, and these companies had to get talent, and they had to do it quick. So what they started doing was offering ridiculous salaries and these huge pays and bonuses and all these huge packages, right? And they got all these guys in. Well, then what happened was it started to saturate the market, and these companies realized, oh, well, now we're overpaying these people. So they started just laying everybody off and then rehiring for the same job at like half the pay with no benefits because they could get away with it. That's what he's talking about. So what happened was it was created as a bubble and then it burst. Not like this was a long-standing thing that got reversed all of a sudden. No, this was a short-term blip. But that's what but that sort of motivated them to do a poll here, and that's why he's talking about it. I just wanted to give you some context. Come on.
Workers, excluding those who are self-employed, because you can't lay yourself off, to find out how worried they are about being laid off. So we asked about job security, opinions on if they're taking preparations to get ready for layoffs, financial readiness, and how far they'd be willing to go to keep their job. And as you mentioned, 70% of the people we surveyed said they're bracing for layoffs in some way. That means different things to different people. 40% of those are people who say they're saving more of their income than usual. 32% say they're actively browsing job listings. And 24% say they're actually applying to new jobs right now.
So the way those questions are asked, and I looked a little bit at the survey, he kind of screwed it up. They're making an assumption. So if I ask 100 people, are you saving more or less than you normally would? And 40% say I'm saving more. I don't go, well, look, these people are preparing to lose their job. That's what he's done here.
Right. It's you're making a connection that may or may not exist.
Right.
Because the question had nothing to do with a why. It's just, are you?
Well, the other thing, 32% of people are actively looking for other jobs. I do that all the time. And the reason
that doesn't mean they're afraid of losing their job. It means they're looking for a better one.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing is right now, like he said, unemployment's really low, but it's a tight labor market, which is good if you're looking for a job. It's bad if you're an employer because there's not enough people to fill the jobs. Right? So you have to pay more to get the right person because everybody else is fighting for them too. Demand is really high for talent. So in this case, if you're the talent, it's great because you can negotiate. It's a bidding war. So yeah, it doesn't shock me that a lot of people are looking for new jobs. So this layoff thing, I think, is interesting that they're spinning it this way because I don't quite see where he's getting that assumption from. You know, maybe he'll get into it here in a second, but when I read this survey, it didn't make sense on the conclusion.
Those numbers are even higher among younger workers who are especially nervous. It makes sense, given that Gen Z workers would be a little more anxious, they have less seniority, and they're particularly worried about being laid off.
With that in mind, and kind of
but why? He doesn't get into it, but why?
Continuing down that thread, I'm wondering where it continues to kind of break up, where there's some divergences even among generations that are actively in the workforce right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There are big differences, and one of the big ones is that age gap. So we found that baby boomers feel more secure in their jobs. It makes sense. They've worked for decades, building up their seniority, whereas Gen Z workers, 88% are taking steps to prevent a job loss, trying to preempt it in some sort of way. Layoff anxiety is a term that we asked about to find out, just how concerned people are. And a majority of Gen Z workers and nearly half of millennials are anxious about being laid off. So we've definitely...
Yeah, and once again, the way they asked that question, do you have any anxiety about layoffs in general? They didn't ask you being laid off specifically. That's where I think this poll screwed up.
Well, also, I am somebody who, generally speaking, has always had a little bit of anxiety about the idea of layoffs or losing my job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that's losing the thing that keeps your lights on, you know?
Right.
So there's a clarity and questioning that doesn't exist here, because is it asking me, do I feel anxious about losing a job? Hell yeah, of course I do. All day long I feel anxious about that.
Right.
Do you feel anxious about losing your current job? Are you concerned you're going to lose your No.
No.
I'm actually not.
No. That's what I'm saying.
I don't see that coming. I don't think I'm going to lose my job, right? So these aren't the same question.
No.
Some people have that as a general stress, like kind of back of their head, like, oh yeah, that idea freaks me out, and would say yes to that, although they might not really think they're going to actually lose their current job.
Right, and you've got to remember, when he's asking these questions, the one context that I think everybody leaves out is the starting in that 2001 recession, and then after that was 9/11, and then you had the sort of recession in 2002 and 2003, and then you had the housing crisis in 2008, and then we had a really slow malaise kind of recovery under Obama, and then blam, Trump the president, we had the pandemic, right? And we just got out of the pandemic. The last 20 years, wage growth has been below inflation or flat, right? As where prices have gone up, and especially education costs have skyrocketed, housing costs have skyrocketed. So it's harder to survive. And that's the last 24 years. Right? So, yeah, baby boomers 24 years ago, they were in their 40s. Not a big deal to them. They were already had secure jobs. For the rest of us who were, in our teens or 20s, it was scary. It was hard to find a job or a decent job. And then you're paying your student loans and everything too. And then you're trying to find a place to live. And the cost is astronomical. And especially if you're talking to Gen Z, they grew up in that. In their teens, they're kids. And now they're starting to see some hope, and it's starting to look good, but they're still gun shy. And understandably so. And it's tough too when you're, okay, I'm, 28, 29, whatever, and I'm looking at the world and it's like, okay, wages are going up, things are a little bit better, but my rent is $1,600 or $2,000 a month. And I can't afford a house. Which is funny because I could probably get a $300,000 house or $350,000 house, and the mortgage payment would be the same as my rent.
But you can't afford to save for your down payment.
Payments
or maybe you've been able to save some for a down payment, but making that down payment would literally wipe you out, and then you have no more savings for an emergency fund. Yeah, I mean, there's some obstacles there for sure.
Right, and that's the thing. So, yeah, is this anxiety about the economy or job loss, or is this just an anxiety about the ability to pay for shit? Which is really more of a function of price gouging and overpricing, and the real estate market overpricing, and inflation being over, from businesses overpricing. And am I just going to be priced out of the market?
Now, financial anxiety really is a real thing, and I'd be super interested into some in-depth research about financial anxiety, but I feel like it requires that you pull the string a little bit more about what the real anxiety is about, which is kind of what you just mentioned. I'm somebody who might be generally anxious about the idea of unemployment, even though my own job is actually pretty secure.
Right.
But if you pulled the string on my anxiety might really have more to do with the fact that my job's pretty secure, but our raises have kind of stopped. I'm not really in line for any raises coming in the near future, and I don't really see it coming. But every year, all of my everything else is increasing, And so, maybe my anxiety is more around that. I'm not actually worried about losing my job. I'm just worried about being able to pay for the stuff I need.
Right. Right. And so, like, when you ask that question, do you have anxiety about layoffs? It's like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's not the same as asking me, do I think they're going to happen?
Right.
Do you have anxiety about, having a heart attack? Well, yeah. Do you think you're going to have a heart attack? No, my cholesterol's good. My blood pressure's fine. I'm good. I'm not worried about it happening.
But if we're going to start talking about heart attacks, I can definitely
Yeah.
feel myself feeling anxious about it for sure. So yes, I do feel anxious
Right.
about heart attacks.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's the way they phrased it is kind of stupid, and they're not. I mean, they're skirting around, I think, the bigger issues. Right? And he's kind of jumping to this conclusion about, well, 70% are worried about layoffs. It's like, well, but had you asked the question? Right? Because if you ask me, are you concerned about people being laid off? I'm like, well, yeah. If that were happening, sure. Right? But if you're sitting there
Right.
going, do you think people they're going to be massive layoffs anytime soon? I'm sitting there, no, I don't think so. Why would I think that?
Right.
I mean, it's just, once again, just bad polling, and it makes the news, and then people think, oh, there's a problem. And
Right. Well, when you look at these studies and polls and questionnaires, you have to look at what they're actually asking and see, if there's some fault to be had in the actual questions themselves.
right. And a lot of it, too,
Yeah.
when you read the news, you got to be skeptical because a lot of it's just headline shit to get you to click on it. And I'm not going to say we don't do that. We do that occasionally. That's why we have Marjorie Greene and Lauren Boebert, because we get the most clicks on those, so we hit them a lot. But, we're not going to do some stupid poll and sit there and tell you that, well, this is actually an issue when it's not. I mean, it's not a thing. So I just thought that was funny. So anyway, let's move into the news real quick. But speaking of people with financial concerns, Donald J. Trump. So
Man, you are the king of segue there, Duncan. Good job.
yeah, thank you. So Donald Trump, and we'll cover this next week. I can't cover today. The $450 million he owes to the state of New York. Basically, that's coming to deadlines. They might start seizing his properties and stuff. But we'll get to that in a bit. But right now, he's kind of sucking it up. Biden has more money in his coffers. He's raising more money. A lot of Trump's money that he's getting from his donors he's basically taking that to pay his attorney fees for all his criminal shit. We figured it was about $10 million a month he's paying in attorney costs. I mean, it's ridiculous. So he finally got this thing. So after he got shot at, right, and the bullet kind of clipped his ear and whatnot, and all that, Elon Musk put out a big tweet about how he's going to now give Trump all this money. $45 million a year kind of thing, right? And here's Trump
One lunatic funding another one, man.
Exactly. So here's Trump talking about it. Let's see if we get sound.
Elon endorsed me the other day, and I didn't even know this, he didn't even tell me about it, but he gives me $45 million a month.
At no point did I say that I was donating $45 million a month to Trump.
So we'll get into that in a second. But so here's what happened. Elon Musk.
I'm so confused. Okay, I know you're going to explain this, but let me have my reaction here.
Go
that
ahead.
they're both batshit crazy as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm having this moment where I actually don't know which one of them to believe. And that's new for me because usually, either one of them say anything and I go, I don't know. I'm kind of automatically a little skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know who to believe.
So don't believe either of them. They're both liars. They're both full of shit. So what happened was this. Elon has been giving Trump money. He's donated money in the past here, in the recent past, right? But he can't tell anybody that because Trump is, as we know, against electric vehicles. He does the whole bit about drowning with a shark in an electric boat thing, right? Over and over and over again. And the Republicans want to rescind all these electric vehicle contracts from the government. So Biden wants to make like the entire, like, you know, all of our government vehicle fleets electric vehicles in like whatever 10 or 15 years, whatever it is, right? But these are huge contracts from the government. And Elon Musk is the CEO of Tesla, who's one of the bigger manufacturers of electric cars, until GM finally catches up, which their CEO is an idiot. But that's the deal. You can't sit there and tell your shareholders as the CEO of an electric car company that I'm giving money to the candidate who wants to rescind all of our contracts that we have from the government, which is where we get all our money. Are you listening, shareholders? But he thinks he can buy Trump, and then Trump will do whatever he wants when he's president. So that's what he's doing. He's basically trying to bribe him. But what happens is Trump gets shot at. Everybody thinks Trump's going to have a huge bump in the poll. He gets shot at, and then the RNC and da-da-da. So Elon thinks, perfect time. I'm now going to endorse Trump and give him all this money. And that's what he says. Basically, I'm going to buy the next president. Right? Trump doesn't get a bump in the polls. The RNC doesn't give him a bump in the polls. The shooting doesn't give him a bump in the polls. In fact, the polls stay pretty flat. And then what happens? Biden drops out and Kamala starts to take over. Kamala raises a record amount of money in the first day after Biden drops out, within 24 hours of Biden announcing. And Kamala is now in the polls, looks like she's beaten Trump. Right? Or she's at least tied with him in most of the polls. For just being announced to be instantly tied means she's probably going to kick his ass. So now Elon's walking all that shit back. No, I'm not giving him any money. I didn't say that. Here it is.
Do you still donate $45 million? I'm sorry?
At no point did I say that I was donating $45 million a month to Trump. That was a fiction made up by the Wall Street Journal.
So, you said it was a fiction.
That was a fiction made up by who? Who's he say it's made up by?
The Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal actually is conservative paper, very conservative since it got bought by, was it Sheldon Adelson? So they're a right-wing Trump paper now. They used to be, back in the 90s, a pretty respected paper, but not anymore. But one of their reporters got it from somebody who worked for Musk, actually said that. And Musk was supporting him on tweets and all this stuff. So he offered him all this money, and then now that it looks like he's not going to win, well, it's like, well, why am I giving him all this money if he's not going to be president? I'm not going to get anything out of it. But just to show you how much your vote counts versus Elon Musk's, that he could throw money back and forth like that. I mean, but it's just funny to me because now Trump is like, well, now he's all upset about it, and Trump's like, well, I don't know him, and he's a punk, and
it's like the middle school playground fight or something,
Well, what kills me about it is it's a bunch of fucking rich guys who act like royalty, and they pretty much are. I mean, they inherited all their shit. And we got to deal with this. And as part of it, sitting there thinking, like, didn't we fight a revolution so we wouldn't have to deal with these ne'er-do-well dipshits? I mean, didn't we, like, kill a bunch of British people for this? And now we've got our own. And I'm kind of like, Jesus. I thought we fought a war to not have a king, but apparently no. People want to go back to that. Oh man. But they had that whole thing, and we'll move into this because the Supreme Court did the presidential immunity, and they just made it up. They made up a law, which they're not supposed to do, but they did. So now the president's pretty much effectively immune while they're in office, right? Well, the Supreme Court, who's involved in that, you've got John Roberts, who we know has taken some bribes. Clarence Thomas has taken a ton of bribes. Alito's taken some bribes. We know of a couple of the others, the three that Trump appointed. All three were, the American Bar Association said, were not qualified to even be judges, let alone Supreme Court justices. right? And they all lied in their confirmation hearings, right? And they all said, "No, we're not going to overturn Roe," and they did overturn Roe, and they based it off of two legal arguments that predated the United States. One was from the 1300s, from the Dark Ages. The other was from a guy who was a judge in the Americas before it was the United States. And other than banning contraceptives and abortion in the little town he was the judge in, his other claim to fame was he burned a bunch of girls to the stake for witchcraft. And that was how they did Roe. So the Supreme Court's just making shit up. And they are totally off the rail, and they're completely bought by these billionaires in big business. So Biden finally stepped up, and I know the Democrats are talking about impeaching. It's not going to go anywhere, but it does do something now, and it puts them on notice, and it puts pressure on Roberts to start doing something. Because there's no ethical standards in the Supreme Court. Because they have to set their own, and they don't. So they can take bribes, and it's totally fine. Right? So Biden is jumping.
I guess the assumption, and you know what the first three letters of assumption are.
Right.
The assumption, I think, was always that clearly, whether somewhat liberal or somewhat conservative, anybody that would make it as far as getting confirmed for the Supreme Court is going to behave in a way that has a certain level of ethics. Clearly, that's just how these people would be. One would think, right? Like, in all fairness, one would think. However, clearly that's not what's happening.
No, what happened, when they wrote the Constitution, you couldn't anticipate everything. And the nice thing about the Constitution that was unique is you can change it. And it gives a lot of flexibility. The other nice thing about it is it's all based on mistrust. Because you got to remember, all these guys were in the revolution for different reasons. A lot of them did it because they wanted land or money. And none of these guys trusted each other at all. Right? That's why you have this separation of powers in government. So they're always looking over each other's shoulders. The concept was, though, so the Senate would appoint Supreme Court justices, but the president would have to nominate them first. So you'd have competing people picking this person, right? What they didn't anticipate was you'd get a party system where it's only two parties, and the Republicans would get power, and they would all coalesce together and pick the person they knew was corrupt and would do whatever they wanted. They couldn't have anticipated that. Their thought process was it's got to go through enough steps that there's no way they're going to pick somebody who's that corrupt and power hungry. But when you have a whole party that's in control and they have the presidency and they have the Senate and they're all working together in lockstep, then yeah, that's what you get. Right? So, and you got to remember the three that Trump picked were all they were all picked by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative organization. They're also, the Heritage Foundation, just so you guys know, also behind Project 2025. This is part of their all spiel for decades now to basically make America into a monarchy. A Christian white nationalist monarchy. We're going to go into this article where Biden's actually doing something about the Supreme Court, and hopefully the Democrats will follow suit. So, basically, it just says Biden's backing major Supreme Court reforms. Here's what they would do. And it goes into it, but essentially what he's talking about is the three main things he wants to do is create an ethics reform. So there's ethics rules they have to follow. He also wants to set term limits, which I think is a great idea. And the other thing he wants to do is pass a law in that repeals the presidential immunity. Okay. None of this is going to pass because the Republicans still have one vote majority in the House, so they're going to shoot all this down because they don't want a Supreme Court that is bound by rules of conduct. And they want the non-presidential immunity thing because they don't want their candidate to be. Yeah, but it should tell you everything you need to know about the parties. So the one party, the Democrats, has the House and the Senate, or the Senate and the presidency. The Republicans have the House, and now they have the Supreme Court, which nobody should have the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should be unbiased, but they have the Supreme Court, very conservative. I mean, like ridiculously conservative. But they don't want to give up any of that power. But now you have a president who the Supreme Court has just said is immune. And what is he trying to do? He's trying to get rid of this immunity. So it should tell you everything you need to know right there, just by what we're looking at. If I said, Lacey, you have complete immunity. You can rob banks, murder people, do whatever you want, and nobody can stop you. And then Lacey turned around and said, I don't think that's right. I don't think anybody should have immunity. That would tell you a lot about Lacey's character. Because most people would be like, really?
Really? Cool.
I'm gonna go rob a bank.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go murder that person I don't like because I can get away with it now. I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know. You have the one party that just won't let go of power, and the other party sitting there going, no, we shouldn't even have this power. Even though you gave it to us. Now, it's, like I said, it's not going to go anywhere because of the House, but that's the point is, depending on how the election goes, if it looks like the Democrats take the House, it looks like they will. Can they hold on to the Senate? Maybe, maybe not. And if Kamala Harris wins and she becomes president, now she's got a roadmap for Supreme Court reform. And term limits, I think, is a no-brainer. You shouldn't be able to serve for life. Nobody should.
I mean, I can't think of anything you're appointed to do for life. Like, for life?
Well, I mean, the original thought was, appoint them for life, that way they can't be manipulated by either side. There's no way you could really bribe or blackmail them because they have that job for life. Well, they didn't anticipate the kind of wealth and affluence we'd have in this country in the future.
Right. I'm sure they were thinking about it in terms of you can't make them fear for their job.
Right.
In order to sway them in one direction or another, but now they can take these bribes and whatever, right, left, and sideways, and not ever worry about losing their job. So, they were having some insight on one side, but not anticipating the other way it could go.
Right, and they also didn't anticipate that a president would nominate somebody and the Senate would confirm somebody that was corrupt. They didn't anticipate that because they didn't anticipate that a president and the Senate would ever fully be aligned because they're supposed to be at odds. So
right.
They just didn't anticipate it. But that's the problems we're facing today is things that just weren't anticipated. They didn't anticipate that kind of just immorality and corruption. And those guys didn't trust each other. They were corrupt and immoral too, but they set it up in a way that made sense back then, but nowadays, not so much. Not when you've got a bunch of ideologues in like a cult, like the Trump cult or the conservative Christian cults or whatnot. So at least it's a roadmap for something to do going forward. Because I would like to see that. I'd like to also see, I think originally the Supreme Court was only like 3 or 5 people, something like that. It wasn't very many. And then it eventually became, like 7 and then 9 when there were 9 circuit courts. But that was a century ago. Now we have 13 circuit courts. I think there should be 13 justices. And I think they shouldn't serve more than a decade. And then they need to be replaced. I think that would solve a lot of this. Because now a president can appoint somebody in their 40s, and that means for the next 40 years, that person's sitting on the bench making decisions that affect all of our lives with pretty much carte blanche. So if you get an ideologue in that, or somebody who's a cultist or a right-wing nutbag, that means we got to deal with the rest of us. The entire country has to deal with that. 300+ million of us. So yeah, we really need to do something to rein in the Supreme Court. So I'm glad they're doing something. It's not going to go anywhere for now, but it gives you a sense of where the Democrats are going to go in the future if they win. And it gives you a really good sense of where the Republicans are going to go in the future if they win, which is even further towards the corruption, further towards the right. So just to give you
Sadly.
just to give you a sense of what you need to know. So right now, I mean, Biden did step down finally. He's 81. He's old, but Kamala came in, and that was my big concern, right? I was going to vote for Biden. Lacey was going to vote for Biden anyway. But I was also voting for Biden in the sense that he's 81. What I'm really voting for is Kamala Harris. Because Biden, what are the odds he lives out 4 years in a term? So you're voting for the vice president, right? Just as much as you're voting for the president in that scenario. Typically, I wouldn't give a shit who the vice president is, but in that scenario, it was concerning. Just like Trump's 78. So what are the odds Trump survives 4 more years? They're pretty low, right? So really, you're voting for J.D. Vance. It was his vice presidential pick. And that guy's a freaking nut. We'll cover.
Man, did my little heart have a moment at that phrase.
Oh, man. What, Lacey, don't you think you should be forced to be in a marriage even if your husband's abusive to you? Oh, and you can't be in a gay marriage. Fun fact.
Oh, good.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Let's take 5,000 giant steps backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact, I don't think we should be taking relationship advice from J.D. Vance because, and I will bet money on this, I'll bet you Lacey's been in more relationships with women than J.D. Vance has.
Oh, my.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
Do we know his number? I don't know his number.
I'm guessing it's single digits.
All right.
I'm guessing I could count it on one hand. He's a doofy guy. Anyway, though, but because of this, the age thing, Biden's now stepped out at 81. Trump's 78. But Trump now at 78 is the oldest person in the history of this country to ever run for president. And I want to get into that because it's freaking funny. So here's David Pakman, and he covered this story, and I thought this was just hilarious.
On Fox News saying all of a sudden they're talking about Trump's too old. This is not going to work. She doesn't seem to get that it started as an obvious joke, but it's kind of working. So maybe it is a good idea.
What happened is like the Democrats have this bat signal that goes out like, here's the new talking point. So after saying that Joe Biden was perfectly fine and his age didn't matter at all, and he runs circles around them at the White House. Now all of a sudden.
I know, I love that. Go ahead.
Can we get one of those? I don't think we have one, but if we could get one of those, that'd be pretty great.
Well, that's the thing. It's so funny. There's a bat signal of the talking points. The Democratic Party doesn't work like that. The Democratic Party is a lot of different coalitions. There's more left-wing coalitions. There's lots of different races, different sexes. We have most of the women. Lots of different age groups. Republican Party is predominantly, like the vast majority of Republicans are non-college educated white men. It's one cohesive glob, right? And they fall in line. That's why when you watch Fox News, if you ever, don't do this if you don't have to. I've done this before. If you watch Fox News for like 8 hours, right?
Why you would ever do that, I don't know. Please do that if you don't like yourself very much.
Right, but if you do, you see the progression of how it works, and it's the same talking points all day, and they just beat you over the head with it. But it starts early in the morning, and they have like the Fox and Friends show, and they do some people are talking about how Joe Biden's really old, and maybe he can't be president, and his mental ability, right? And then as you go through the day, they keep talking about it, and then by the time you get to the early afternoon, it's there are serious concerns out there about Joe Biden's ability, and people have said this, and and they've been reporting on it. And what they're talking about is what the morning show did, like it's a fact. So they manufacture a story to manufacture a talking point. The funny thing is she's saying the Democrats do that. And I love it when you watch Fox or Republicans or right-wing people. every time they accuse somebody else of doing something, you can be certain they're doing it. It's exactly like a cheating spouse. You know your spouse is cheating when they start accusing you of cheating. Because it's on their mind.
And this memo basically goes out that says Trump is.
By the way, when the word basically doing a lot of heavy lifting, a memo basically goes out. Now, we all just realized it's really funny that now we can just focus on Trump's age the way they've been focusing on Biden's age, and they can't go, well, your guy's even older, because Kamala Harris is 59, and they are furious.
This memo basically goes out that says Trump is now the oldest nominee in history, and it's so incredibly ridiculous because they actually seem to believe that
now it's ridiculous?
Cutesy ridiculousness like that might work. I don't think
So that's what's so funny. So for the last...
Now it's ridiculous?
I know.
That's straight out of your playbook.
Right. For the last 6 months, that's all you guys have been talking about. That's all the Trump campaign is Biden's too old. Biden's got mental problems. Biden forgets where he is. Biden's not capable.
Hey. So I want to say, I have never been on team caring that much about the age of the person running.
Sure.
I really don't. I actually might be a little biased if they were too young, because I don't want my whole country run by a 25-year-old.
You have to be 35 to be president, but yeah. So.
Yeah, well, for a reason, exactly. That being said, you know, you don't get to be the people who are like, oh, age matters, age matters, age matters. Never mind, age doesn't matter anymore. Like, it either does or it doesn't. To me, I don't care about his age the same way I didn't care about Biden's age.
Right.
But in all fairness, if you guys were going to be like throwing that blow at Joe, you can throw that at old Donnie Boy too.
Right.
Fair is fair, man.
Well, what happened was, and this is why it's funny, and he's kind of, we'll watch a little bit more. What happened is him and a bunch of other people, because they've been ragging on Joe Biden forever about it, but also about half the electorate, over half the electorate, thinks Trump is too old. But it was the two old guys, right? Now that it's a young woman, or not young, but she's 59, a middle-aged woman, right? Now it's like, well, wait a minute. Now Trump's too old, because Trump's 78. And Trump forgets names. Trump forgot the name of his vice presidential pick. He called him J.D. Mandel. I mean... Trump forgets all shit all the time. Trump falls asleep in court. He falls asleep at the RNC. I mean, Trump's old.
So, okay, I'm digressing, but I'm sorry. Can you imagine being the current VP pick and the potential phone call you could get as a warning from Mike Pence?
I was gonna say, you know, we'll
Can
get
you
it.
imagine a phone call like that? Like, be careful, dude. You don't know what you're signing up for. This sounds real great.
Well,
I tell you, it is not.
Well, no, and they had that. We'll talk more about J.D. Vance in a bit, but yeah, I mean, he's basically signing up to be blamed for everything. He didn't realize it. I don't think he's that ultra bright. He's a good writer, but he's not that bright. But that's the thing is, now that it's the shoes on the other foot, now they're all fucking pissed about it. That's what's fucking hilarious here. So, we're going to watch a bit more because this just kills me. Come on, computer.
It's going to work.
Well, it started as a joke. If they weren't wildly triggered by it, it wouldn't work. But it's infuriating them so much, and it's reportedly getting back to Trump as well. The great thing about this is we on the left, we all know it's nonsense in the sense that Trump's age has nothing to do with why we aren't voting for him. It is also the case that there has been huge corporate media malpractice. Think about how since June 27th and Joe Biden's poor debate performance, there have been thousands of stories and likely tens of thousands of corporate media hours cumulatively devoted to Joe Biden's cognitive state. despite the fact that for years and since June 27th, every single speech and interview that Donald Trump gives is mangled and scrambled beyond recognition. He seems visibly confused and nonsensical. The point of all of this, other than pointing out the absurdity of the media malpractice, is exactly to trigger them like this. They are furious. And
he's right. And that's what happened that I think is so funny, because I covered this last week. This was a big story. Trump met with a bunch of CEOs. This was a week or two ago we covered this. And all the CEOs, most of them were already kind of in the tank for Trump, because they're looking at, well, we want less business regulation and we want lower taxes. And we're not going to get that from the Democrats. And they had this thing where they invited both Biden and Trump. Biden couldn't make it because he was at the G6 or something, or NATO or whatever. Trump came, Trump spoke, left, and they talked to, these guys all talk. They're all CEOs. They all know each other. They all talked. And basically the word out from them was, oh, well, I was for him, but not anymore, because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He just meandered the whole time. He's senile. So that was the thing but that story wasn't covered. What was covered was Biden's debate performance. Biden's too old. They can't cover that anymore. That's been their whole thing they've been running on. Biden's too old. Now Biden's out of the race. It's a younger candidate. So now the left makes the joke, oh, Trump's too old. Huh? Oh, Biden was too old, now Trump's the oldest ever. Now they're all pissed because they're like, oh, no, you can't use our thing against us. That's not fair.
Wait a minute. We said that first. You don't get to say that about our guy, because we said that about okay, never mind.
Right. So, yeah, they're pissed. He's right. It's hilarious. But that's what they're doing. I mean, it just cracks me up. But there is a big referendum on that. That's going to be a big issue coming into the election. But they had to go back, okay, now that Kamala's probably going to be the nominee. I mean, she's going to be the nominee, let's face it. It'd be stupid to pick anybody else at this point. Now that she's going to be the nominee, they got to find a way to attack her. Okay. Quick fact about Kamala Harris. She's a woman. She's also part black and part South Asian. So she's a mix. Kind of like me. Only I'm not a woman. Now, got to attack her. We could go on her record, but you can't. There's not a lot to attack on her record. She's got a pretty good record, as in government, for her, decades in government. So what are they attacking her on? Well, please, Republicans, don't attack her on the fact that she's not white and she's a woman. Oh, nope, they did already. That's immediately where they went, and that's all they got. So we're gonna jump into this.
That reveal a
give it a second. Oh.
MAGA world in mega meltdown mode. They are trying to find ways to smear her any way that they can, from attacking the way Vice President Kamala Harris laughs to her endearingly nerdy love of Venn diagrams, and they're doing it with blatant and ugly racism. They're suggesting that a woman who spent 7 years as San Francisco's district attorney, who served as California Attorney General, a United States Senator, and is currently America's vice president, is somehow unqualified for the job that Donald Trump once held, that she is only where she is because of her race. Again, unlike their guy who once hosted The Apprentice. Take a listen to what they're saying.
The only reason Kamala's in the White House is because of the DEI deal Biden cut with Bernie.
And of course, her whole history is DEI, diversity, exclusion, and equity.
What about white females? What about any other group? When you go down that route, you take mediocrity, and that's what they have right now as a vice president.
Apparently, they feel, or a lot of Democrats feel, they have to stick with her because of her ethnic background.
Intellectually, just really kind of the bottom of the barrel. I think she was a DEI hire.
So, DEI hire. Now, when we say that, it has one meaning. When they say it, it has another meaning. Okay? When you're talking to professionals like me and Lacey, and you say, hey, DEI hire. Oh, yeah, we hired that person because we needed to diversify. Right? Because we wanted to expand. That's what companies do. DEI doesn't always work, but it does work, especially like if you're talking about marketing and sales. Those are huge. Like if I want to start marketing to black women, I probably should hire some black women. I mean,
you mean middle-aged white men might not know every demographic?
Right.
What?
I'll give you a great example of this. So Betty Crocker used to do the cookbooks and stuff. Betty Crocker's not a real person. It was made up by a bunch of white guys in marketing. They made her up, a character, because they knew we're selling to women. We can't, we're all men, so we made up a woman because they're not going to hire a woman. Not back then, right? In the 50s when they came up with it. And Betty Crocker was kind of a big thing. I mean, a lot of American women were familiar with it. Thought she was a real person. Wasn't. But guess who came in and blew that out of the water? Martha Stewart, who was a woman. And she knew how to sell to women. Right? But that just gives you an example of how DEI hiring works. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you want to talk about DEI hire, I'm sorry, if you're a white guy from the South and you've got a job like that, or you're Larry Kudlow on Fox Business, if you're a white guy and you got your job, you're a DEI hire. You're the ultimate DEI hire.
Man, I mean, this whole thing is so disgusting to me. I can't even stand it. There is somebody in there saying that she is underqualified because she was attorney general and this and that and whatever. Okay, prior to Trump taking office, what were his actual qualifications in government?
He ruined no government, but he ruined 3 casinos, dozens of other businesses, had a bunch of scams, had a fraud college. What else? He was a reality TV host, which is the only thing he was successful at.
So,
but he was a white rich guy, so he was a DEI.
No government experience at all.
I know.
And one could argue that his experience in business had to do with running things into the ground and claiming bankruptcies.
His experience in business was inheriting $400 million from his dad.
Qualification.
Yeah. No, but that's my point.
So they want to, throw darts at her for anything they can come up with. But my God, you're coming up with she doesn't have the appropriate experience when your guy is the least experienced person in the room.
But why doesn't she have the experience? And that's where DEI, when they're using it, means a different thing. What they're saying is she's not intelligent or experienced because she's black. It is their way of saying she's a lazy N-word, but I'm going to use DEI instead of saying the N-word. That's exactly what it is. And in fact, this was a big story. It was the top story on the AP News after a lot of this came out. Speaker Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House of Representatives, pulled all the Republicans together behind closed doors and told them, you guys have to stop it with the DEI hire stuff. That tells you everything you need to know about the Republican Party. That we got to pull everybody together to say, hey guys, stop being openly racist. That's how racist that party is. They have to sit down and have a meeting about, guys, we're being too openly racist. And it looks bad.
Because it's bad. It looks bad because
it is bad. I know. It's the whole Ted Lieu.
It is bad.
It was the whole Ted Lieu bit on, they were complaining about, yeah, every time you Google, like, Republicans or you Google my name and stuff, all these bad things come up, right? And Ted Lieu at that hearing finally got up and said, guys, if you don't want bad stuff to come up at you when you Google your name, stop doing bad stuff. And it won't show up on the internet. But they're desperate. I mean, they don't have anything to hit her with. So it's gone total to racism, sexism. We're going to get more into it. But they are desperately trying to find something that will stick to her. And nothing has worked. They've got nothing. Here's David Pakman again.
Making fun of her laugh, saying that it's a cackle. Sean Hannity last night using the exact same approach, making fun of how she laughs. This is their takedown of Kamala Harris.
Here's just one reason that voters seem to detest Kamala Harris. You decide.
Okay, so.
You are everyone here, right? We are special. You know,
And is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
No. I thought we were supposed to conserve things. I couldn't reconcile it. Now I can.
All right.
I'm sorry. I think her laugh is super cute.
Well,
like it's kind of contagious. But to the side of me thinking her laugh is really cute, like really, this person is running for president. The only thing you can come up with is like, let me make fun of her laugh. Are you kidding?
But they did that to Hillary. They did that same thing to Hillary, and it's not that there's something wrong because their laugh. I mean, like Sean Hannity doesn't laugh, right? But like Tucker Carlson has the creepiest laugh, you know, kind of laugh, right? Trump, have you ever seen Trump laugh? The guy's a humorless void, right? The whole
I don't
point,
think I've ever seen him laugh.
No, because he has no sense of humor.
Huh.
But that's the thing. Only smart people have senses of humor. But the thing about it is they make fun of her laugh, and the reason is it's because she's a woman. See, she's giggly. She's not serious. She's flight. That's the whole point. Or she's got a stupid laugh. Blah blah blah. They would never ever do this to a man. Ever. This is the she's a bimbo. She's just a giggly little girl. That's the whole premise. That's all he's doing. That I'm sure Sean Hannity's never seen a woman laugh or smile before, so it's just unusual. Can't imagine a woman in his presence ever feeling joy.
Okay, in all fairness, I'm going to say I have a tendency to make fun of Trump's hair.
Yeah.
And the fact that it kind of looks orange.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am making fun of his appearance. I am actively making fun of his appearance. It's not nice of me, but I am.
He does look like a candy corn a little bit. The white hair and the orange skin. You could do candy corn porn. But that's what they got. So they got to go after her skin color and her race. That's all they have.
He's going to hire a black female for vice president, and that not just.
Come on, there we go. But that's what they got: skin color and race, and her sex, and that's it. So that's why they're making fun of her laugh and all that stuff. It's just stupid, but that's how they have to attack her because they don't have anything else. And the thing about it is their base eats that shit up because their base is, like I said, mostly uneducated white guys, and a lot of them are racist. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so they do that. Racism. What did they attack Barack Obama on? He's not a real American because he's black. And then it was always a Muslim. And all that, but really what we're attacking is he's black. We just can't say that. And they think they can't say it because we're the left, we're all woke, and we're just assholes, and we're just going to be mean to them and cancel them, so we can't really say it. What they don't realize is you can't say it because A, it's stupid, and B, it's prejudice. I mean, really, because that's what it is. I don't like you, other person, because you are a different color person. when you think about it for 2 seconds, it's retarded. I mean, it's really stupid. I don't like you, other person, because you have a different set of genitals than I do. It's not a reason to dislike somebody. But we'll get into some more text. Here's Morning Joe. I don't watch this guy again because this guy cracks me up.
First, he's going to hire a black female for vice president, and that he just skipped over. What about white females? What about any other group? It just, when you go down that route, you take mediocrity, and that's what they have right now as a vice president.
Are you suggesting she was a DEI hire?
100%. She was a DEI hire.
I want to say, you're a white representative from the South and a male. What do you think the odds are they were going to pick any other sex or race for your district? 0. So we're stuck with you, Mr. Mediocrity, because there's a black woman living in your district who's way more qualified than you are. And is smart enough not to say racist shit on camera.
Yeah, seriously, like, get it together, Republicans. If you're going to be competitive here, you got to have your people, like, come out a little better than this.
Right.
They need to come out looking, you know, like noble heroes or something, not like a bunch of, like, bigots, racists, sexist.
But that's what
and just like petty school children, you know.
But that's what they got. The whole Trump being old thing. Yeah, it's ageist, but that's not why we did it. We did it because you guys have been doing that for Biden for fucking ever. And now the tables are turned and we think it's funny. And now you guys are all upset about it. It's like, now it's even funnier.
Now it's even funnier. Yeah.
I mean, but then it's like you come to Harris and it's like, okay, well, she's black, so, and she's a woman, so she can't be qualified. She was only hired because she's a black woman. Well, dude, so what? White men are like automatically qualified? But if you're not a white man, then you only got your job because of your skin color? I mean, he misses the other side of that coin, which is, dude, part of the reason you have your job is because you're a white man.
Right. And look at all of these white men that get into these positions. Is anybody picking apart their qualifications, or is it just a racist and sexist thing to do to pick apart the qualifications of somebody who is black or South Asian or female or insert other thing here?
Right.
But
that's the thing.
People don't go, oh, look at this white guy. Well, geez, he wasn't qualified at all.
Right.
Like, I'm not hearing things like that, and it's really disturbing. That title, what is it, 1951,
Yeah.
totally applies. It's insanity.
Absolutely. The thing that cracks me up about it is this. Is I've talked to people before, and it's like, there are different types of people who are racist, right? And we all have prejudice. The difference is you got to be aware of it. Once you're aware that, oh God, I have that prejudice, then you start to realize maybe I shouldn't. Right? But you're gonna do it. We're just, as monkeys, you know, as part of the ape creatures, we're tribal. We tend to do that stuff. But you have to be aware. And the thing about it is you have the racist guys who are like openly racist, that use the N-word, say horrible things about other races. And you have that also, like, I can tell you right now, living in Hawaii, Asian people are extremely racist because a lot of them grow up in a homogenous society where everybody's Asian. So they have very, prejudicial opinions about people that aren't. Right? I mean, it's everywhere. But my point is you're making these assumptions, you need to be aware of it. So you have the guys that are just openly racist. You have the guys that, will say racist things occasionally, but they generally vote for equality. And then you have the guys, your white suburban guys that, they're very nice and they never say anything racist or do anything racist and blah, blah, blah. But man, when they vote for racist policies. And if their son or daughter came home with somebody of a different race, they would lose their shit. Right? And that's what he doesn't get is, I'm saying the only reason she got her job is because she's a black female. Well, that only works if you're a racist and you assume everybody else is a racist. Because automatically, white males are all we're picking from, so they've got to be competing against other white males to be qualified. But in this racist world, we're allowing these people in because they're different races. So you have to exist in a world where you're a racist and everybody else is for that to make any sense. What he just said. That's why the Republicans don't say that out loud. They don't deny it because they live in that racist world in their minds. They don't deny. I mean, they're not sitting there saying, "Well, we don't believe that." They're saying, "Just don't say it because it looks bad." But also, because we can't just focus on racism, we got to focus on the fact that she's a woman. So we got to make fun of her laugh and other qualities, and of course, we have to do the standard conservative thing when we're talking about women. The only reason they have their job is because they slept their way to the top. Because women are incapable of actually achieving anything unless it's given to them by a man that they've slept with. It's a fact. You know that, Lacey.
Apparently.
Apparently. So here's the majority report. Emma Vigilant and I forget the other two guys' names, but they're going to pull this clip from Fox, and it just shocks me that this was said on Fox News.
Fox Business. The guy, his whole gimmick is that he runs a fatherhood podcast. How to
All right, let Brandon, we'll give you a chance to weigh in after we play this, because this is Binder is unfortunately speaking truth.
Yeah, and then there's the DEI press secretary telling you that the DEI vice president is the future of the party here. And so the future looks kind of dim for the Democrats here, but this is no shocker either. Kamala Harris, she's the original Haktua girl. That's the way she got where she is. And the party's going downhill if it's in her hands.
That was tough. That was harsh.
Yeah, and then there's
Okay.
The hot what girl?
The Haktua girl. I had to look this up because I didn't know either.
What the hell does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
I know, because we're old and we don't know these things. This is it's from a meme from these guys who were on the street and they were talking to all these people after they were getting out of the nightclubs who were drunk, right? And they were asking them about sex. And here it is. This is the girl they're referring to. This was a famous meme that came out. And I'll show it to you.
That makes a man go crazy every time.
Oh, you gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. You get me?
So she was. What? So she's talking to a drunk 21-year-old girl. They're asking about sex, and she said, "You got to spit on his dick." She was making a joke, but he's saying that Kamala.
Oh boy.
Kamala
she's making a joke, but I'm kind of a little taken back that that's what we're saying about the vice president of the United States.
Yep, that the only reason she's there is because she's basically sucked her and fucked her way
So
up.
Trump can run around with this grab them by the pussy thing
And rape women.
And he gets some sort of a free pass. Kamala Harris does, to the best of my knowledge, nothing.
They've been married forever, yeah.
And she's, been married for a very long time to the same person. And she's being accused of that sort of thing?
Because she's a woman. There's no way a woman could be in a position of power unless she sucked her way up. That's her whole... physically sucked her way up. That's what they're saying.
Right, because clearly we're all whores.
Yeah. That's basically what they're saying. That's, once again, it's racism and sexism. That's all they've got. And that's what they're going to run on. And the question is the upside for them is, all their constituents are pretty much racist and sexist, so that works. About a third of the country is like that. question is do the independents who don't know anything get out there and vote and go, well, wait a minute, we don't want that shit. Problem is most independents don't follow the news. They don't know any of this shit. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I sure hope so. I sure hope the independents vote with their conscience on this one, because it's kind of getting to where that part, that your conscience matters as much as the policy does, really.
Oh, yeah. But, yep, that's all it was. So, they've got that, but she's doing well in the polls. And she raised $81 million in the first 24 hours since Biden stepped down. And that's $81 million from small dollar donors. The largest donation you could give to that $81 million at the time was $3,300 or $3,200, something like that. So it was 800,000+ people that donated to her. And a lot of those were $15, $20. And out of the 80 million, when they did this survey, well, not the survey on it, the research on it, 60% of those 800,000, those donors, so over 500,000 of them, had never given money to politics before. That's a huge sign that she's invigorating a lot of people that would normally not be engaged. They're now excited. Right? So she's doing really well. She's initial shock polls. She's tied with Trump in most places. She can beat him in others. And that's right out of the gate. And she's raised she's raised record amounts of money on top of that. And she's been doing these Zoom calls, and hundreds of thousands of people on these Zoom calls. I mean, I think at one point it broke Zoom. Because it was too many people. And on top of the fact, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, when they get up and they're going to nominate her, right? Already, the entire Democratic Party, if you want to volunteer, good luck. They don't have any more spaces for any more volunteers. DNC is already sold out. Beyonce's already endorsing her. Right? Charlie XCX is endorsing her. All these famous people are coming out. Who did Trump get? I know you missed this last week. Trump got Hulk Hogan. That's who he got.
Oh, he's a real weirdo too.
Oh, he's a real creep, yeah. Yeah, we covered his...
He's a real weirdo.
Well, remember, he got fired from the WWE for using the N-word a bunch of times. Saying a whole bunch
of he's also, like, fairly sexist as far as I'm concerned. You know, he had that reality TV show. I'd only seen it maybe a couple of times, but it was a couple of times enough to show... I was like, gosh, I didn't realize how sexist he was, just seeing him interact with people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and he got kicked off the air for being homophobic. And that was back in, 2010 or whatever that was. But they've got nothing on Kamala, so we've got to think of another strategy is kind of where they're going. So Mike Johnson, the brilliant Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, who we've made fun of a ton because he only got there because he was the most bland person, because they couldn't get anybody else. Mike Johnson's got a plan. It's not a good plan, but it's a plan. A little slow today on the internet.
Switching someone out like that. 14 million people went through the process and chose this nominee, Joe Biden. Now a handful of people have gotten together and decided he's no longer suitable. That's not how this system works. They are violating democratic principles. And I think that's a real problem, and I think there'll be a lot said about that in the days ahead.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark,
So, we'll get into Mark Elias here. This is Brian Tyler Cohen's show. Mark Elias is a really brilliant lawyer. So Mike Johnson's this is the other argument they made too, is it's undemocratic because Biden won all the primaries for the Democratic Party, right? Harris wasn't running in those. So now that he's stepping down, to just give it to her is undemocratic. And that's against the rules. Which is bullshit. And Mark Elias will talk about this in a little bit. But that's their argument that they're making. And then the second part of that real quick before we get into that. The second part of that is he's going to try and push lawsuits in different states to get her off the ballot because of this. So that way she won't be on the ballot in every state. And that's how they're going to try and beat her. But that's what they're going to talk about here real quick.
Was Mike Johnson, and of course, as we all know, there's been a lot of talk about legal challenges from people like Republican Speaker Mike Johnson. So to be clear, are there any legal obstacles that would prevent Kamala Harris from becoming the Democratic nominee now that Joe Biden has stepped aside?
Absolutely not. There is 0.000% chance that Mike Johnson and his fevered dream of somehow there being legal action to prevent Kamala Harris or whoever the Democratic National Committee nominates and submits to the states to keep them off the ballot. There is no chance that will happen. You know, Mike Johnson has been hanging out with insurrectionists for so long that he has flipped the legal from the illegal. Mike, this is legal. What you all did in 2020 was illegal.
He's got it. Let me explain this because it's so stupid. So, the Republican Party picks its candidate, the Democratic Party picks its candidate, and anybody else who is, you have to be born in this country, over the age of 35, and you've had to contiguously lived in the United States for the last 8 years. If you meet those three requirements, you can run for president. The next step is you just got to go to each state and jump through the hoops to get on their ballots. And some of them require you to get petitions signed by enough people and things like that. But anybody can run. The parties are separate from that, from the election, in that sense. They just pick whoever they want to run, and the parties can do it however they want. And the Democrats haven't nominated anybody yet. It was just assumed to be Biden because he's the current president. It usually is. Right?
Right.
And yeah, they held primaries, but the primaries are to see where their voters are. And the Republicans held primaries too. Trump didn't compete in the debates. But remember this. In 2020, the Republicans didn't hold any primaries. They just nominated Trump. So is that illegal and undemocratic, Mike Johnson? Democrats can put whoever they want up. As long as it's a person over the age of 35 who's lived in the country, they can put anybody they want. They didn't have to put Kamala. They can put whoever. And then, of course, the upside is you can't say it's not democratic because whoever they nominate, whoever the Republicans nominate, they'll put them on the ballots in the states, right? And then we get to vote on it, and then the Electoral College decides. So how is that not democratic? I mean, the Electoral College we could argue about, but you still get to pick who you want to vote on. You don't have to vote for Kamala. You don't have to vote for Trump. You can write Elmo in. It doesn't matter. You still get a vote. But that's what they got. They're going to try and find some legal way to get this to the Supreme Court and hope the Supreme Court overturns it and picks the next president. That's what he wants to do. So essentially, he wants to take away democracy in his argument for, I'm going to make it, I'm going to take away your right to vote and your right to choose the leader. I'm going to take all that away, and I'm just going to give it to the Supreme Court who's already in our pocket. That's what he wants to do. So basically saying, I want to take away your right to vote because giving you the right to vote is undemocratic. That's his argument.
Oh my God, you just can't make this stuff up.
Well, in the presidential immunity case, the Supreme Court actually declared the Constitution was unconstitutional. And that's why it's so funny to me. He's like, you're mixing up legal and illegal, man. You're the guys who tried to overthrow the country. And overthrow the government. And now you're trying to do it again by saying they're doing it, so we have to do it. It really, that's their whole strategy. Is they have to do it's us or them thing to pass all this shit. That's what they got. Oh man. So that's what's going on there. But let's move into some fun, quick clips, and we'll do some stuff and wrap up. Is that cool?
Yep.
All right. So I wanted to do this because this was Trump just recently, the other day, at a Turning Point action thing. Turning Point's very right-wing, the Project 2025 people, all that stuff. But listen to what he says, because this is just so crazy to me that he would say the quiet part out loud like this.
If you want to save America, get your friends, get your family, get everyone you know, and vote. Vote early, vote absentee, vote on election day. I don't care how, but you have to get out and vote. And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
He did not literally just say that.
Yep.
Even if you were trying to do that, why would you say that? If you are trying to fix it, you don't
democracy.
tell people. I mean, don't you kind of, like, isn't there some sort of, like, doing evil code that, like, you're supposed to try to, like, make it look like you're not?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Aren't you supposed to make it look like you're not? I feel like you're supposed to be, like, sort of trying to do it on the sly or, like, cover it up or something, right? Isn't that, like, Villain 101? I don't know.
Yeah, he's not a very smart villain. You're thinking of comic book villains who are intelligent. Real criminals like Trump in real life, those guys are fucking idiots. If they were smart, they wouldn't be criminals. They wouldn't need to be. That was it. He flat out said it. Vote for me and I'll end democracy. I'll take all your rights away. Just gotta vote for me once and it'll all be done. And I'll just be like Putin.
Oh my God, I can't even.
But that's part of this too is, and I hate to admit it, part of it's he's just old. He forgot he's not supposed to say that out loud. Because he's dirt old. He's not...
Oldest ever.
Yeah.
Oldest ever.
Is he taking too much Adderall or not enough Adderall? That's the question. Yeah, old man Trump, you gotta remember, you don't tell them you're gonna end democracy. You just keep that buttoned up. But, so that's Trump, right? You got the one choice. Now you got his vice president. Now remember, like Lacey said, he's the oldest ever to run for president. Oldest man ever. Person ever.
So effectively, you might actually be voting for this guy.
J.D. Vance. So here's David Pakman, and he's going to cover this. J.D. Vance is just a weirdo.
Of Mountain Dew, racist.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
Yeah.
He's just a weirdo. I don't... Little Jeb Bush energy. Joke didn't land. Oh, I love you guys. Mountain Dew's racist.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I can think of is, I guess, what was it in the past? Mountain Dew was initially, it was marketed as the hillbilly drink. And that, because he's a hillbilly, he's from the Appalachia, or Cincinnati, the
Wasn't
suburbs. But
initially marketed as like a mixer for some sort of liquor, like.
Yeah, when we were young, they used to mix it with stuff, but I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah, I that's the only thing I can think of. But
I thought that was originally. I thought originally it was not really even marketed as like a cola on its own, but like as a mixer for some sort of liquor or something. I don't know.
It's basically, yeah. it's just like Coke with just more sugar, or Sprite with more sugar. I mean, I can't remember, but yeah, he's just weird. He's just a weird guy. He's got no energy. He's really bland. He tells a stupid joke. Nobody gets it. Then he laughs. I mean,
JD Vance, call Mike Pence. Call the guy who did the job before you. If you actually know who the guy is who did the job before you, don't you think it's a really good idea to call them and be like, so I've got this offer on the table here. What do I really need to know about this? Do I want this job? Would you do this job again?
well, here's the thing, though, and I would say this. We'll watch another clip in a second, but he's actually Trump when he picked him. Biden was running, and Trump was actually looked like Trump was going to win in the polls. Trump was up by a little bit, right? And the polls hadn't budged much. So he picks J.D. Vance probably because of the money, because J.D. Vance comes with Peter Thiel, who's a freaking billionaire and a right-wing nut job. Also a real sexist guy. But so he picks J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance he thinks is going to appeal to the base. He kind of does, except for J.D. Vance's wife is Indian. Her name's Usha. And that really pissed off the racist part of the base, because they don't trust him because he's got a brown wife. Right? So that kind of hurt a little bit. And now Kamala's running, and J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to the Heritage Foundation for Project 2025. And they're hammering home what a bland, greedy little racist, sexist suck-up he is. Right? And now it's hurting Trump in the polls. So now, if Trump loses, like Lacey pointed out, who do you think Trump supporters are going to blame? They're not going to blame Trump. They're going to blame J.D. Vance. So he's basically signed over his career on the hope that he thought Trump would win. It was a huge gamble. And Lacey said he's kind of fucked. I don't know where he goes from here other than down, unless Trump wins, which
And
I don't see it happening.
And they're probably really, hoping it will help them get Ohio.
Well, maybe. The problem is he's not popular in Ohio. And Trump's going to get Ohio anyway. I mean, I don't see Trump losing Ohio. It's kind of a bad state to pick. If you wanted to pick one, Arizona would be a good one to pick, But, yeah, he's just a weird, bland guy. I'll also remind you, this is the guy who thinks divorce should be illegal, or wants to get rid of no-fault divorce. And he thinks you should stay in a divorce even if you're being abused. Physically. He said that. He's a freaking nut. He's anti-abortion, very anti-women's rights. Yeah, he's out there. Here's another clip of him from David Pakman.
Country is absolutely disgraceful. Let me get a little philosophical here. I imagine most of you did not vote for Joe Biden, and if you did, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. But if you want to run for president, you've got to make your case to voters. You make your case to voters. That's what President Trump did, even though he would have already been the president. And even though he was by far the most popular person in the Republican Party, he ran for the Republican presidential nomination. He faced some good competition, and he made his case to voters. The idea of selecting the Democrat Party's nominee because George Soros and Barack Obama and a couple of elite Democrats got in a smoke-filled room and decided to throw Joe.
There's always a rich Jewish man behind the scenes somewhere. All paths lead back to that.
Biden overboard. That is not how it works. That is a threat to democracy, not the Republican Party, which is fighting for democracy.
I highly doubt.
That was it. So he immediately goes into, it's the rich Jewish guy that picked Kamala. And this speech was so bad that Fox News cut away. Fox News cut him off after 10 minutes of his hour-long speech.
Oh. Well, they love racist bullshit.
Yeah, but it got to the point where it was all the conspiracy shit, and he was saying the 2020 election wasn't valid and all that. Well, remember, Fox just settled for $750+ million for lying about the election. So they can't have that shit. And then he's spewing all this up again. Fox, but he is so boring. You see that? Well, I mean, they're going to say it's right. They say everything's racist. They say Mountain Dew's racist. Pause for laughter. Crickets. I mean, he's just... The other one we'll get into next week, because I don't know, I didn't get enough about it, was the I guess he told somebody that he had sex with a couch once. So,
what?
Yeah. He pleasured himself between the cushions of a couch. I'm like, okay. But, you know what's worse? I think the couch was a minor.
Oh my goodness.
But that's why everybody, you got to get out there and vote. Get off your couch and vote. Or if you're JD Vance, maybe the couch gets off you. I don't know if that works. But speaking of weird, creepy sex stuff, so JD Vance got picked at the RNC. Now, during the RNC convention, and I know Lacey's looking at it, this interesting fact came out. So the RNC convention was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and all these Republicans came to Milwaukee, all these conservatives, and George Santos is going to point this out. You remember him? He was the disgraced Republican congressman who lied and got kicked out. But this is what happens. There's a sex app called, well, it's not a sex app, it's a hookup app called Grindr. It's like Tinder for gay people. Yeah, Grindr in Milwaukee during the Republican National Convention had record usage.
Oh.
So
wow.
George Santos is going to point this out.
So, Grindr executives are calling the RNC convention the Grindr Super Bowl. Folks, look, I'm openly gay, no qualms about it, proud conservative Republican. I met my husband on Grindr, and we've been together for 6 years going on 7, married for almost 3. Let me tell you something. Just come out the closet, boys. Come on. It's fun. You can be gay and conservative. But look, Grindr's already out of you anyway based on the hits. And guess who's in town? It's all you conservatives. Bye.
Just come out, boys.
I'll bet you there are a lot.
I mean,
they grew up in those kind of conservative communities and households where they had to repress it. And I bet there are a lot of gay men that are conservatives that just they can't come out because they're too afraid. But hey, they go to Milwaukee for the RNC convention. Yeah, let's flip on Grindr and see who's going. See what's going on. I'll go hear JD Vance speak and talk about Mountain Dew, and then I'll go, give me a little something, something. A hotel bar.
Oh my God.
Oh God. So yep. So I gotta tell you though, I mean, I'm straight, so it doesn't really do much for me. But gay men, if you're out there, Republican National Convention's apparently the place to be.
Apparently.
Yep, that's the place to be. That's like it's like Lollapalooza. It's like a mecca of gay activity. The RNC. Oh man. Well, I wanted to do a couple quick things. So there was this one story I kind of wanted to cover real quick. So AP did this where they were talking about most Americans said Biden should withdraw. And this was before he did. But this was kind of a big story that went around, but they missed the point. I thought it was really interesting, so I just want to look at this. So there's the article. Most say Biden should withdraw from the presidential race. But as you go down into it, right, that's true, and he did withdraw, which is fine. But here they have most Republicans want Trump to stay in the race, while most Democrats say Biden should withdraw in favor of somebody else. So this is percent. Green is they should continue for running for president. Purple is they should withdraw. So if you look at it, even overall, Biden had 70%, but Trump even had 57%. So over half of Americans and almost half of independents think Trump is just too old and should drop out of the race. But it's funny because the title was all about Biden. And that was the joke we were saying before, where now that Trump's the oldest, they have to run against that because they've been running on Biden's too old. Now Trump's the oldest one in the race, so now Trump too old is they made their argument against themselves, right?
However, I mean, when you look at Trump's though, 73% of Republicans
they're with him. Yeah.
Felt that he should stay in, and Biden did not have that situation with his Democrats.
No, but look,
in all fairness.
But this is why, like, when people asked, and I said, I think Biden's going to win. He did drag down the bottom of the ticket, but I thought he was going to win anyway. And this is why.
I thought.
Well, now I'm positive Kamala's going to win. But this is why, right here. Under Donald Trump, the second bar, where it says Republicans who think Trump should withdraw, 26%. Republicans are typically in lockstep. 26% is a lot. And like I pointed out before, about 5% of voters in the primary voted for Nikki Haley, even after she dropped out, months after she dropped out. Why? Because they didn't want to vote for Trump. And Trump cannot afford to lose more than 1 or 2% of the Republicans. And it looks like he's going to lose, maybe 10 to 20%. And if that's the case, this race is over. In those swing states. Right. So I don't see how he makes up that deficit where 1 out of 4 Republicans think he's too old and should drop out or don't like him. I don't know how you make up that deficit. Democrats, it doesn't matter because it's a bigger party. We get more votes anyway. Right? You're never going to have 70 or 80% of Democrats agree on anything. It's just never going to happen. But I thought that was interesting because it kind of shows you a big chink in the armor there. So, how are you doing on time?
I want to wrap pretty soon because I want to feed myself and stuff before I have to do some other things.
All right. So let's skip this and let's just go to the fun one. All right. So we'll do this one last one and then we'll wrap up. Okay. Okay, everybody.
Sure.
Sorry, everybody. Lacey's kind of got off and out today. So, our personal favorite. We got to cover this one last thing. Lauren Boebert, the Boebert Duke. Mm-hmm. My personal favorite. So Lauren Boebert recently got a speeding ticket. Not a big deal. People get speeding tickets. Except for she didn't pay it and she didn't show up to court. So
just pay the ticket, girl. Just pay it.
So here's the articles from CBS. Congressman Lauren Boebert pulled over for speeding on Vail Pass, pays ticket late. So what happened was she gets pulled over. I think she was going like 15 miles an hour. She was going 84 in, into 65. So she was about 20 miles over the speed limit. It was a $174 ticket. Okay. Now, in Colorado, according to the Colorado Department of Revenue, any citation payable to the DOR, Department of Revenue, must be postmarked within 20 days of the violation date in order for payment to be applied to the citation to prevent the citation from being sent to court. Court records show Boebert did end up having her citation referred to court in Eagle County because of a late payment. Boebert's campaign manager, Drew Sexton, confirmed the ticket was eventually paid to DOR past deadline on July 3rd. Records show the case was closed on July 9th with a plea agreement. Okay, but what was funny about this is you get the ticket, and I'm an ex-cop. I've written tickets before. You get the ticket from the cop. On the ticket, usually it comes with an envelope, or used to. I don't know if they do anymore. And you just put in the check, and then you mail it, and it's free postage. Right? So the post office takes it. Nowadays, though, you get the ticket, you just go onto the court's website and you pay it.
probably enter a little citation number, whatever, pay
Right.
it.
Now, because it's a violation of a rule and it's law, you have a right to contest it. So there's also a hearing date automatically on the ticket, right? Where you show up with everybody else who got tickets, and that's the hearing date, and you show up in front of a judge. So if you don't pay it, right, by paying it, you're pleading guilty to a violation of a rule. It's not criminal. It's just a violation. So you pay it, you pled guilty, right? If you don't, you can show up to the hearing and contest it, right? I used to be a cop, and you'd have to show up to these hearings all the time. They were drag, right? But people can contest it. But if you don't pay it and you don't show up to the hearing, now they automatically find, they can automatically find you guilty. But what ends up happening is now they put out another little warrant on it, on the ticket, and that's what happened. So she didn't pay it. She didn't show up to the hearing. Then they sent her a little warrant saying, hey, you're in violation of that, right? She calls the court and she tries to say, oh, I mailed the check, but the post office must have screwed it up. And the court said to her, why didn't you just pay it online? And so she pled and paid it online. But she can't even take care of a ticket, and she's a congresswoman. It's like, honey, you could have just handed it to one of your staff and said, pay it. Use my credit card.
Have some sort of like personal assistant or something that can handle some of that, like pick up my dry cleaning and pay this ticket for me,
But here's the thing that kills me about it. Because it's just a simple violation of a rule. We've all got a parking ticket or a speeding ticket or something like that. Most of us have, right? It's not criminal. It's a violation of a rule. It's illegal, but it's not criminal illegal. There's a difference, right? Robbing a bank, criminal illegal. Spitting on the sidewalk, violation illegal, right? But Lauren Boebert is very, very anti-immigration. And she wants to deport all the immigrants, and she's for the setting up camps and that Trump wants to do and taking away birthright citizenship and all that stuff. And I'm just real quick on her website. This is her border security thing, and it's all the stuff she's voted for to criminalize it and deport these people or put them in jail for being in the country illegally. The thing that cracks me up about it is it's a violation of a rule to be in the country illegally. If you keep doing it, it becomes criminal. But the first time you do it, it's not criminal, right? It's just a violation of a rule, but she wants to make it criminal. Well, gee, Lauren, you just sped. That's a violation of a rule. Shouldn't that be criminal? Well, I don't think so either. But I do agree that, yeah, if you keep coming back into the country illegally, then it becomes criminal. Lauren Boebert has multiple traffic tickets. She rolled her car once and got a reckless endangerment, right? And in fact, I think if she gets one or two more tickets in Colorado, they take away her license. She gets her license revoked. But it's a double standard here, right? She can do all this stupid shit, but they can't. And it just cracks me up. And so I got to do this. Here it is. I think it's this one. Yeah. So because we're talking about Lauren Boebert wanting to criminalize all these people coming to the country looking for jobs, and then recently getting the speeding ticket problem, I thought it might be fun to go over her and her family's previous arrest record. So we're going to do that real quick. And I found this article from the Independent. Arrest, citations, and restraining orders. All the legal dramas in Lauren Boebert's family. So as you go through, So as you go through this article, they talk about excerpts from her book and stuff too. Her husband, so this one, the first one, 3 years earlier, okay. Jason, her husband, had been involved in a controversial incident at a local hangout on a night when he decided to try and bond with my stepfather, Lauren's stepfather. So they went to this bowling alley. I guess he was getting into some conversation with the bartender about his penis, and then he decided to pull out his penis and show it to the 17-year-old girl that was working there. And then he got arrested and charged with indecent exposure to a minor, so sex crime. This is before they got married. Granted, she was 16, he was 22 when they met, so there was probably statutory rape in there too. But, so that's her husband. then you had her and at the Beetlejuice thing. If you guys remember that or not, we can go into that. I'll show you this quick clip here.
Boebert. Say it 3 times and she appears in security video from a weekend performance of Beetlejuice, where the congresswoman was kicked out of the theater for being disruptive. The DCPA says she was vaping. Boebert's team denied that, said the haze was from fog machines in the show. That claim goes up in smoke when you see the video. The pregnant woman sitting behind Boebert told the Denver Post she asked her to stop vaping, and Boebert refused. Her one-woman show continued, taking flash photos, raising her hands and dancing, often the only one clapping or standing up in the crowd. Boebert occasionally took a break from being disruptive to enjoy the company of her male companion. He briefly had a grasp on the situation before ushers returned and told Boebert she had...
So, I want to point out they were feeling each other up, too, at the musical. Lacey and I have had to cover this. This was a matinee.
People tend to really bring a lot of their kids to matinees, those earlier shows.
So her and her boyfriend are making out and groping during this whole thing, right? Or the guy she was dating. In Colorado, that's a misdemeanor. It's indecent exposure. So there's a criminal thing she wasn't charged with. Yeah. Oh man, she's on fire. This girl is on fire. So there was that incident with her husband. There was the incident where she did that. There was one where she was arrested for, what was it? So the first, the congresswoman herself, she found herself in handcuffs in 2015 at a Colorado music festival for basically getting into a fight with a cop at the festival. The following year, she was pulled over for speeding and arrested for non-payment of a ticket. So she's got a history of not paying tickets. In 2020, Garfield County obtained a restraining order in an attempt to stop her gun-themed rifle restaurant shooters. Last month, a restraining order was granted to her for her husband to keep him away because they're getting divorced. Recently, she's being, what was it, the 37-year-old company of the Democratic Aspen Bar for the Beetlejuice thing. Recently, she's been under investigation for punching her husband, her ex-husband.
Right, wasn't she like, I did not punch Jason?
I did not punch
like
Jason, yeah. And then her son, who's 18, who has a 1 or 2 year old, he just got arrested for it was like ID theft and a bunch of other things, and he's looking at several years in prison. So that's Lauren Boebert, their whole family. So Colorado, please elect her again. We need content. Jesus.
Wow.
But that's why she switched to the 4th District, because it's conservative, and they'll probably elect her anyway. We'll see if she gets elected. She's still going to run against the other Republican there. But you would pick that over any Democrat. Even if it's the person's a former vet and very conservative Democrat, you'd still pick that because you don't like Democrats. I mean, that's just how backwards it is.
Oh my gosh.
Well, anyway, that's our show, everybody. We had to end on that one.
I just gotta say, we gotta hope she gets reelected, just because if she doesn't, then she's gonna disappear out of that spotlight, and we're not gonna be able to
exploit her anymore.
Look at clips of weird stuff she does anymore.
Oh man.
Yeah.
She did finally pass a bill for the first time. So that, It was a minor thing. I can't remember what it was, but yeah. So she got one done. See, Colorado, it wasn't a total waste. She got one. Your tax
Just
dollars at work. Yeah. Well, anyway, Lacey, where can everybody catch you?
Alrighty, my friends. As always, you can catch me in my materials at mysensewithsense.com. You can find information about my courses and workshops on top of articles I've written. If you have any questions about any of those things and want to write into us, or you want to send us a clip, invite yourself on the show to come and talk to us, you're welcome to do so by emailing us. Where do they email us, Duncan?
Email us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It's down below. Invite yourself on, whatnot. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Please like.